And we are back with our 14th installment of the Think Fitness Life podcast with your host, myself, Matt Gluckman. And we got Mike Urso and Eric Menchie over there in Boston. How you guys doing today?
Good. Yourself?
I'm alive, so I'm doing good.
I'm good, Matt. Thanks for asking.
Don't forget about Mike.
Someone just woke up.
Yeah.
There must be a delay.
I love kicking these off with a awkward question. So, yeah. Let's get firing.
Well, I figured an awkward question better than an awkward pause. That way, there's something to fill the space.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, something awkward to start these off. It always makes me feel warm inside. Or at home, rather. So a couple announcements this week. I have one. Urso's got one. And then next week, we're going to talk about specific nutrition strategies and not just like quick trends to do in a week and lose a bunch of weight and just to gain it back, but like successful working nutrition strategies that work for us, that work for our clients. So that's going to be a fun episode. Please send in more emails because right now we're getting about give or take 0. thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com, all one word. Yeah, I'm trying to think of just make up some emails to make myself feel better.
We could pay some people. Go down to the center of Boston and pay some people.
Hey, give homeless people a couple bucks to think of some good questions. I'm sure they'll think of some damn good questions.
Absolutely.
Best money spent.
Maybe not this category, but I'm sure some questions.
The growth mindset. Oh, God.
You may be right.
All right, so my announcement was nothing new, unfortunately, but I just stumbled across this show on Netflix called Bill Nye Saves the World. Really cool show. Definitely check it out. So far, I've only seen a couple episodes, but if you're going to start with one, I'd say start with season 3, episode 1. It was the one I started with, and it was just such a cool episode. And just to talk about it briefly, was the whole basis for the show was about life expectancy and trying to prolong life and talking about how we have, about 35 trillion cells in our body and they do their job and they die. So one of the things that they looked into was the future of organ transplants and stem cells. And they actually did this in Boston where they took just a leaf of spinach and they used detergent to wash away like all the plant material. And then what's left behind is these cellulose skeleton veins looking piece. And what they did was they blasted this thing they threw it on it like stem cells of a heart stem cells. And the thing literally started beating. It was fascinating. It was so cool. And they're just talking about, extrapolating on that and taking it further. They're talking about how, they can implant vascular network with a beating human heart cells to regenerate heart tissue. Maybe you could use broccoli to grow lung cells or bamboo to regenerate bone. So it was pretty cool. Definitely worth checking out. Bill Nye Saves the World. It's on Netflix. I would start with I know it sounds weird, but start with season 3, episode 1, and then go back and start watching them.
So is this out for like consumer buy yet, or is it still in research?
A consumer buy what? You're gonna buy some spinach and
can I buy spinach?
No,
more muscle.
It's not.
Plant them into my body.
No, they were saying that it's about 5-10 years away from practice trials on humans or animals in general. But it's definitely newer technology that unfortunately you can't buy at your local CVS.
It's crazy.
It's pretty cool though, right? The thing, it's a freaking leaf. It's like a clear leaf because they take all the pigmentation out of it and all the plant cells out of it, and then they just blast it with stem cells, and then you just see this thing have like a life pulse to it. And essentially, they're talking about it more and more is that these stem cells have all these code written in them. So, a heart stem cell has code written in it to beat, to, contract, essentially.
So did that say then it kind of regenerates heart cells, or can they grow a new heart from that?
It was growing heart cells, and they were thinking they could use it in heart transplants. I'm not sure if they meant for a replacement heart, or if like a way to replace a heart, or I mean replace a piece of tissue from on the heart, or if like there was a hole in someone's heart. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and watch it. Well, you should go
So
watch it
crazy.
now.
Oh, I'm gonna.
Nice. Good. Yeah, Urso, go ahead. You can go ahead and lead us off with your announcement, because it leads us into what today's
Yeah.
podcast, which is about growth mindset.
Yes, versus fixed mindset. And so I came across an article on Medium titled "5 Ways Self-Help Books Breed Unhealthy Habits." And I was like, whoa, I got to read this, because at least, once a month I have a self-help book queued up on my Audible that I listen to, or I guess you can call it, self-development or whatever you want to call it. But I listen to a lot of these. And this article went into some really interesting points that were kind of counterintuitive to what developing a healthy mindset, and defining what success means. And he made some really good points in this book. The author is Mark Fishbein, and one of the main first things he said was, a lot of these self-help books really have a lot of stories and not a whole lot of data, or not whole lot of science that backs up. So there's not a whole lot of comprehensive studies that are looked at, and what they are is they looking at like really small sample sizes of more like anecdotal type of things. And I kind of looked back at all these different books I read, and I was like, you know what, he's really right. And I think it's because facts are boring, and stories just sell more books, and people are more interested in hearing, like we've talked about before, how to be more relatable. And there's an issue with that too, in a way of, there's not a whole lot of like science that's backing up some of these self-help books. So there's a couple other points they make where they talk about a lot of people rely on reading these books to like change themselves without actually looking at their environment or their surroundings, actually focusing on mindset versus like what's actually going on in reality around you. And then a lot of them, this was a really interesting one, is they push a lot of success, fame, money, freedom as like, this is this, all important type of thing that everyone needs to strive to just have success and fame and more money, and then you'll be happy. And they're kind of preaching that over actually just being happy and having, good ethics. And I thought that one was really interesting, because it's true. A lot of these books kind of have that same, topic behind them, which is, here's how to get rich. And if you can only, work and grind away and make more money, then you're going to be happy. And this is how you do it. You have to wake up and meditate in the morning and do this and do that. And it's just not true a lot of times. For me, I looked at it and I was kind of questioning the assumption that, it's just the mindsets or your habits that have to change for you to succeed. And I think that people really can consider like, looking at their abilities and the actual reality of the world around them, and developing skills as a way to actually help change your mindset. So develop the skills and the abilities to actually help you change your mindset, versus thinking that you're going to be able to change your mindset first, and then all of a sudden you're just going to, be successful. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it.
Well, I want to back up real quick
Yeah.
and maybe categorize and specify some of what you mean about these self-help books, because I feel like there's some come to mind that I've read that were like, wow, that was a great book written by like a doctor, clinically proven stuff. And like, wow, okay, this one was written by someone who is super successful in life and had like a bunch of stories like you were talking about. And then some others seem kind of like they're trying to just sell you the pipe dream, and they're trying to say, this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. And they're trying to have you jump on board just so they can sell a book. So can you give maybe a couple, like 2 or 3 examples of some self-help books?
Well, a couple that come to mind, Ryan Holiday is one who I've read recently, a couple of his books. One, Ego is the Enemy, was one. And that one has a lot to do with, so a lot of his topics are like based on like a new age version of Stoicism. But ego is the enemy is one. The obstacle is the way is another one. And the obstacle of the way, the obstacle is the way is the first one that I read of his, where it actually talks about, you know, having these challenges, and you just have to see it as the challenge is actually the road that's getting you to, move into success. And while that's true, um, they're not taking he's not taking into consideration all these other things that go on. Like, the reality of it is everything that has affected us in our childhood is why we make the decisions we make today, right? And why we've talked about this in previous podcasts before, and there's not a whole lot that goes into that actual reality, right? It's just like you just have to see the challenges as that's the obstacle is actually the way to success, or the path to, you know enlightenment, or whatever it is. And they don't always take into consideration like all the psychological kind of self psychological warfare that's playing on in our heads. Do you know what I mean? Does that
So
make sense?
yeah, would Chicken Soup for the Soul be considered one of like those self help books?
Well, Chicken Soup for the Soul, it's been a long time since I read it, but is
Like
that
in
Jack
those
Canfield?
types of books, because
Yeah,
I used to get
it,
one for Christmas every year.
it's great. I mean, because listen, they're stories, they're relatable, right? But there's not a whole lot of science in those books,
Okay, so
And like I said,
if
science
I'm
is boring.
shopping for
People don't want that. But
right,
the truth is, it's like science is a lot of times what moves the needle, right? We know that
but
facts are facts.
I would say that there's got to be like good and bad sides. So that's what I'm trying to look for here is in, and I guess the best thing is to, like you said, if someone's going to be like a storyteller, that's not going to be the, like, it's all fine and dandy, but that's not probably not going to be the most beneficial. Whereas say there's like the feeling good book called the New Mood Therapy by Dr. David Burns. And this book has been well known in its field since like 2005 or something. And he's a doctor, and it's all clinically proven stuff. Like, there's no science necessarily to back it, but he's well trusted in his field, and therefore his book was well accepted and effective and helpful for a lot of people, versus being a book that you're saying just tells stories, right?
Yeah.
I
Go ahead, Eric.
I think it depends on. I would think also the person reading, because we could each read the
Okay.
same book and get something
Yeah.
different out of it. I think what you're trying to get at is some people look at a book and, all right, this is going to tell me to do this, this, and this, and then I'll be successful and have money. Which I think Mike's saying maybe that's not like the best thing and can actually establish a worse mindset. Where if someone else reads it and they see the story and they can say, oh, how can I relate to that story? Or they saw the hard work or the progress in that person's story. I think it changes how they interpret the book.
I completely agree, because
Well,
like
yeah. Let me.
a book like Man's Search for Meaning versus a book like Shoe Dog, it, one's still one's teaching you more about having the right thought process and morals and characteristics and habits and viewpoints and perspectives, and that gives you the right tools to get through any perspective or any situation. And one just tells you a story of rags to riches and how he became super famous and successful. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
Well, let me say this. This is like my biggest thing with self-help books, right? Is kind of what I said, which is so many people read these books to try to change their mindset. Like, they're looking for inspiration. They're looking for
okay,
that they're looking for the recipe on how do I break through? How do I get unstuck, from where I'm at? That's why you're reading it, is like you're looking for more information. But the
right,
problem is people just read book after book, just collecting information
and
and
never
not actually
apply.
and never take action,
Yes.
right? How many
Yeah.
people have you talked to that have read like 20, 30 self-help books, and they're like, yeah, I'm still all, I'm fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
I still can't figure it out. And part of that is like it's like going a mile wide and an inch deep, as opposed to going a mile deep and an inch wide into something. Meaning, like, if you're going to read a book, take that book. Let's use this analogy. Have you ever watched a movie, right? And then you watched it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, and you were like, wow, I never noticed that first time I saw it. And wow, like, and then you just understand that movie and all the little nuances so much deeper. I think that people can gain so much more if they were to take a book that they enjoyed and got value from and were really inspired from and went into it again and then started to pick it apart, maybe apply some of the things versus, and like I said, developing the skills and abilities versus thinking that I'm just going to read this. It's going to change my mindset of how I think about it. And then I'm magically going to be, transformed into this successful being. I'm sorry, but that's not the reality of how it works. And I think that's the point I'm trying to get at is more people need to deep dive into some of these books and actually make them more actionable, you know?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree.
Absolutely.
They look for the next book that hits the shelf and like they read it, but do they really understand it and comprehend it, or they just?
Yeah.
I think people are just looking to open a cover and it says do this, this, and this, and you got it.
The
But
magic
it's
bullet.
like
Everyone's looking for
you
that.
have to do this, this, and this plus struggles. Repeat it, repeat it constantly, and have that develops the mindset. Then you can move on and approach it.
Yeah,
But I've read some self help books that's I'm like, this is nothing great. I've read better. I've read worse. I just have certain opinions on certain books that I've read, and it just sometimes the point get across to me, and it's just like I've read this before. It's just kind of the same old.
yeah, there's like I think there's a good percentage of people that are looking for that solution, that answer in a way that gets them through life without failures because they have that fear of failure. When in reality, that's some of the best learning experiences come out of that. And I'll probably always go back to this, but I always go back to parenting. Because I think of my grandparents' generation, and they were some like the hardest people I know, and just because of the way they were raised, and it wasn't so hands on and protecting from failures and coddling, and they were just forced into different situations, a different time period, and then you fast forward and you have both parents in the workforce, and no one's really at home to raise the kids or teach the kids, groom them, so to speak. And as a parent, you just want to love on your child. You get home from a long day's work, you work 40, maybe 60 hours a week, and you're probably traveling too on top of it because with the way things work, you need two successful incomes to raise a family these days. And you just want to get home and love on your kids. You don't want to give them that tough love or train them up, so to speak. And I sort of blame that into why people's mindset isn't let me go try, and if I fail, I'll adjust and keep going. It'll be like that not yet mindset like Carol Dweck was talking about, which we'll get into a little bit later. But it's because of that fear of failure that they don't take that action, right? They're still reading. It's like I don't know, again, too afraid to take action.
That's how it becomes that fixed mindset. And, like we said, we're going to dive into it like shortly, but I think that's what kind of sets in stone a lot of, these fixed versus growth. And I know, Mike, you sent that article to us, which was great. And it just shows kind of how younger kids, can approach this kind of mindset, or does it work or doesn't it work?
Yeah. Mike, you want to give us a synopsis on that Carol Dweck video?
Well, let's just start by, let's jump into just what fixed mindset versus growth mindset is, right? Let's define it. So growth mindset is essentially my intelligence and my abilities are essentially unlimited, and I have kind of an open ceiling to how much I can acquire, how many skills and how much intelligence I can acquire. It's the thought that that's what you believe. And whereas fixed mindset is the belief that my intelligence and my abilities are fixed traits or fixed characteristics that I'm limited in some way, right? I'm putting some sort of limitation or restriction on what I'm actually capable of. You hear people say it all the time. I'm just not good at math, or I really suck at this, or I'll never be good at soccer. right? That's people who have very fixed mindsets. And I think we all have some kind of mix of both. I mean, there are certain areas where I feel I have a very growth mindset, and there are certain areas where I feel like I have a very fixed mindset. And kind of if you are paying attention to your own thoughts, when you have that fixed mindset. And if I do feel I have a much more dominant growth mindset, and that's allowed me the ability to continue to grow and to allow myself to be able to learn and never say, hey, I can't do that, or I won't be able to do that, but I just haven't done it yet. And one of the things that she talked about in that video was that using that type of um, I guess, wording with yourself and with others, which is you should correct yourself when you say, I don't know that, or I'm not sure. I don't know that yet, or I haven't learned that yet, or I haven't done it yet. And what that does is it leaves that opening that doesn't get you kind of caught up in being fixed about it, and says, like, I don't know it now, but I will know it later. I will figure it out down the road. And that's that growth mindset that that really allows us to have much more potential.
Perfect. Nailed it right there. And I think a lot of times I would agree with the kind of mixed, I think I'm probably with you, Mike. I have a little more growth, but I definitely can see myself in the past where it was more fixed. And I've kind of seen how I've kind of learned from being fixed and kind of develop more the aspect of the growth mindset. And I think that's a big key to hit on. It's just because you're one or the other, but I think that's more on a spectrum of where you fall on that. And I think some people can be hard fixed, and they're just set in their ways, and it's tough to change that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that plays a role is nature versus nurture into this discussion, because people can be, innately wired to be in a thinking one way or the other, and in other cases, people just lack the appropriate positive environment, and forward thinking parents to help redirect their behavior, or redirect a child's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, or even go Mike.
Well, no, go ahead.
Even I was reading like verbal cues. Like if you tell, say, a young kid that they're really good at something, they're smart at something, and you really praise them up with certain ways, they almost in their mind think that they're owning this, and they become that fixed mindset. Where if you kind of give praise to the hardworking,
Yep.
the effort,
You're
it actually,
saying exactly what I was going to say. Praise the process. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
And I find that extremely interesting because I've heard that before where you really shouldn't use the word good all the time because then people perceive that word as good as they have mastered it down and they don't need to really try anymore. Where if it's like, all right, yeah, good effort, we're always going to get better each time, has a different flow, and it kind of changes how someone's going to perceive the task they just did.
Yeah.
That's how I always grew into better and better managed companies to work for, was by seeing how they valued things, whether they valued just the in the end of the day, you gotta have more money coming in than out. Hands down. It's a business, gotta do it. But whether they valued more so doing the right process and having the right habits and characteristics, or if they valued just the ins and outs. But yeah, side
Well,
note.
think of it this way. I think like high school and like youth sports coaches are doing one thing right, which is, you never hear a coach, like let's say the players line up on the field and run sprints. You never hear the coach say, hey, nice job, man. You're really fast. They never say that. They say, hey, great hustle. They
Mhm.
praise the action that they took. If they were to say, hey, you're really fast, that person may not put more effort in because he thinks he's already doing it right, to Eric's point. Whereas
Yeah.
he's leaving room for opportunity and allowing that child or that person to say, like, this is like you're praising that process, you're praising the action that was taken, not the actual result. And so I think that leaves so much room for opportunity, because now that child is like, wow, if I just keep hustling, obviously they're going to continue to get faster and faster and faster because they're building better conditioning and so on and so forth. But the coaches have it down, and I don't, whether they do it mindfully or mindlessly, I'm not sure, but that's just one example that you see, in everyday life. And you rarely do you hear it from your boss, right? Rarely do you hear it like when you
Mhm.
get into the real world as an adult and they're like, hey, like really nice job, like, staying here late and putting all this work in. You really did a nice job of like, getting all the pieces together to get this final project together versus, hey, really nice project. You did a great presentation, right? There's a big difference there, right?
Yeah, well, she talked about how the response or the feedback the person was getting was going to play a role into the way that they perceived their own efficacy or value at it, right? Like they were, like you said, they were their grades. So like when they got something perfect, they got an A, they were their A. And when people got like a C or D, it's like they thought they were bad at it versus thinking like not yet, like you just don't understand it yet, and having that mindset of, oh, I'm just not there yet, versus, oh, this is putting me in the category of bad at this subject versus being good at it.
I still think going back to the coaches or even teachers, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, "Hey, good job, good play" once in a while, but then they always seem to follow it up with the bigger goal at hand. That was a great play by this player. If we look at the whole play, we still need to score. We still need to win the game. And that's where I think, obviously, if I've heard it, that I've done great in the past. And when I've heard that, sometimes I would just be like, good, I'm at a point where I don't need to work harder. But then you look at the whole game or the whole class, like the grades, like you said, Matt, and then you realize, okay, well, that's just a small part of it. How do I get success in the whole thing? And I think that's where some teachers and coaches really do a good job. But I think a lot of times that good and great is too overused for people.
Yeah, I think athletics is like one of the most important things in a child's development and a human's development, in understanding the right process. And nothing can is really going to be sugar coated. Like, you're going to play other people, and just based upon their abilities and their skills and the way they practice, you're going to see whether you are going to win or lose. And you'll get that feedback of, well, this is what happened. I tripped over here, so I got to clearly work on my my ball handling skills, or I didn't have the endurance for that soccer game. Like, I should go back to some more conditioning and practice, or things like that. Like, you get that instant feedback, you get those little mini failures and those little mini wins, but in a way that, I don't know. Just I think it's easier to see it and understand it rather than in the classroom. And the classroom is super tricky. And yeah, like I think sports usually do it right. It was interesting how you brought that up right away or so.
Well, the sports is one thing. Like, who are the best basketball players to like ever play the game? At least in our generation, in the last 2 decades.
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Who else? Kobe Bryant. Um,
We can say
LeBron
LeBron.
Kareem
James.
Abdul-Jabbar.
So maybe Michael Jordan's a different guy. He does think he's the best on the planet, but but Kobe Bryant, LeBron James,
He lives in Salt Lake, and he plays golf
I
like
bet.
every day.
Well, so but Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, right? Let's take the two in the
Sorry.
last like decade, right? That have been, probably the two best players on the planet. You never hear them in an interview or any like conference say, I'm the best, or they never put all that spotlight on themselves. All they talk about is, we need to get
Their
better,
team.
we need to
Or
practice
okay.
more, yeah, we need to be more cohesive. They always are looking at the next thing. Like LeBron James was just, they were talking about, are you thinking about game 7? And he's like, I don't care about game 7. I care about game 6. Like, he's focused on just the next thing that's going to take him to the next level. He's not thinking like, oh, we just got to get to game 7. Like, in other words, they're not saying like, I am the best on the planet. They're basically saying like, I need to continue to work hard. I need to continue to grow. And if I don't put the work in and focus on the process, then I may have some other guy pass me by. And I
No,
know, you
you're
know what I'm
so
saying?
right. Like, and they never say, even in their verbiage, they never say things like, oh, we just don't have it. Like, oh, we're not good at shooting threes, or we just don't work well together. Like,
It's like we
we
got to get
need to,
better. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
we need to practice some of these set pieces a little bit more. We need to get smoother with these plays and with our cohesiveness. We need to, yeah, right. They always are looking
It's
at
not we suck. Yeah, it's never we
right.
suck. We're not good. It's like we just didn't do it good this time.
Right. And this is what we need to do to get better. And it is that growth mindset of just not yet. We just didn't have it yet, but this is what we got to do. Rather than always focusing on the problem, they're focusing on like a solution mindset or solution oriented thinking.
And this is a good subject because we can look at this not just in sports, right? And you think so there's overarching theme.
Relationships.
Yeah, that too. But with athletics, right? And professional sports, to get to that elite level of sport, you have to have a growth mindset. Like it's
right.
imperative. It's imperative to get to that level, that you continue to grow, because otherwise there are other people with a just as strong growth mindset.
Hunger.
Yeah, they're going to try to overtake you. But let's look at business, right? And we look at some of the best, business minds of our time. Ray Dalio runs Bridgewater hedge fund. Like, most, I don't know, I think they manage more money than any other hedge fund in the world. This guy has this incredible kind of, he calls it radical open-mindedness, which I would say is a form of growth mindset, meaning I am never going to say that I know the answer, or that I am, I have the best answer to this, that I can always have an open-mindedness. Yeah. To say that there's always something out there that I can grow from, that I can learn. I'm never going to say that I know everything. And this is the guy that's managing more money in any fund than any other company in the world. You have so many other high achievers like that have that same type of mindset. And it's the fixed mindset people that you just don't hear about them being as nearly as successful.
So we talked about fear of failure for fixed mindset people, but why else do people have a fixed film? Why do other people end up having a fixed mindset, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to like what were they told as they were growing up? Like, did your parents tell you
influences?
Yeah. Did your parents tell you you were great, you were beautiful, and then all of a sudden, when you got into the real world and you got challenged, you closed off a little bit and thought, well, no, I've been told this my whole life, so I must be. So, and then you don't end up growing or having that kind of open-mindedness that's necessary to be happy or to move on from that. I think that's a huge one, is, all the things that have been told to you throughout your entire life that have influenced your choices and your decisions.
So if we're talking about neural processes, in biology terms, could you say that also, there's probably going to be a percentage of people who just are more born to think in a fixed mindset pathway?
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
because I think
I don't know the research.
You can change it over time, I think.
Right, neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Right. But the spectrum of plasticity is going to be really focused around their own perceived self-efficacy, which we talked about can be influenced through their, like how you reward them or reprimand them.
Yes, the if you think you're stupid, or if you think you're fat, or if you think you're slow, whatever it is, if you continue to think that way, you're going to continue to ingrain that pattern, that habit loop, and it's just going to go over and over and over, and then eventually it's going to get so deeply ingrained that it's going to be harder to pull yourself out of. And so that's it. Like, people get stuck in these kind of habit loops, and they just can't kind of refer back to what's comfortable, because it's hard to do the hard things, right? It's hard to challenge yourself to think like, oh, actually I could put in the hard work. And I think that's a lot of the times, a lot of people don't want to put the hard work in that may be necessary to have the growth mindset, because having a growth mindset means you have to put the work in. Like, that in order for me to go to that next level, to take my mind to the next level, to take my abilities to the next level, I have to put the work in. And it's
safe to say that we can all have growth mindsets.
Yeah.
We all have
I
the
th-
potential. We all have
yeah.
the potential.
And would you say, like Mike, would you think that people with fixed mindset, they know what a growth mindset is? They know the obstacles they have to
Yeah.
climb over. They just don't choose to do it.
Or maybe they don't think they can do it.
Right.
Right.
Or like
Yeah.
earlier you said, someone's always better than you, and that's gonna how it's be. But at a young age, did they get beat in a spelling bee or grades or sports, and they just said, I'm never gonna be the best, and they just nailed it in there? Because if you do that at a young age, you're gonna carry that through whatever you do. And
Exactly.
I've
But
had
then, but
I've
then
had
there are
clients
some
like that.
people who truly think they are the best.
Right, but I would say that could be fixed too, because then they say that they're the best, and you're already having this ego of, okay, I'm the best. What happens when they get to someone better than them? They're going to be like, well, I thought I was the
Well,
best. And some
they're
people,
in denial a lot of times. You see the
yes,
people that are narcissists like that. They're in
yeah,
denial, and they say, well, that he must have cheated, or they must have, there's something, there's something else going on there. I'm definitely still on. I'm the best. You see it all the time.
yeah,
I don't
So
know.
there's definitely some people by choice want to be egocentric and a fixed mindset.
I don't.
totally.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's that they want to be that way. I just think they don't know any better, or they don't know how to get out of it. You know what I mean? A lot of people
A
are just
little bit of
stuck. Yeah,
ignorance.
well, yeah, they're just stuck.
Yeah.
They just don't know any better. And we didn't talk about this even yet, but I would say like your environment plays a big part on whether you're fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Like think about impoverished communities, right? In places where you hear like, 70% of the people never get out of this neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
You hear it all the time. And so, why is that? Is it because people just believed what everybody was telling them and said, they heard that stat and they're like, I'm just destined to be stuck here? Or was it the 30% that actually decided like, I'm going to actually have a growth mindset. I'm not going to allow this to the fact that I live in this neighborhood for it to, to keep me here. And I'm going to rise above. I'm going to put the hard work in that's going to be
Yeah.
required to get me out of it. And I think
Yeah.
it keeps coming back to like putting in the work. And if you're not willing
Yeah.
to put in the work, you're going to be stuck in that and stuck and maybe be okay with having that fixed mindset, but you're also going to be playing the victim a lot versus,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Versus taking responsibility and learning how
Exactly.
to get better. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I heard a great term. Actually, Will Smith just did a video blog on it about the difference between taking responsibility and being at fault. And I thought this was great. Did you guys see that?
No, I have
No.
not.
So there's a difference. So like you hear like being responsible and being at fault, right? You kind of look at them and they could kind of mean the same thing, but in reality, what he's saying is you can be at fault. Like you can go through something. It could be it could be your fault or it could be someone else's fault, but it's up to you to take responsibility for what happens from that point on. Like you could be molested as a child, right? It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to figure out a way how you can move on from that and how you can live a life beyond that, right? And so I really thought that was such a great comparison when it comes to having that fixed mindset. So many people feel like, oh, like, I'm at fault, or, it's always my fault, or, it's I'm, because this happened, it's at fault. But really, like, so many people aren't willing to take responsibility. And again, it comes back to taking responsibility can be hard work sometimes. That means you have to take ownership of the situation.
Well, I think it's also important to know that if responsibility is essentially just looking at how you impacted the situation, and it doesn't matter even if you weren't at fault, like you were saying, but maybe it was something silly and something happened, and all you can do is learn and adjust and move forward. And
Right.
even if it's a situation where, again, you're not at fault, but if you look at the situation in terms of how can I take responsibility and how can I learn from this, then you're just going to be that much better in every step in every situation and every moment that you have in your life. And you do that more and more. You talk about 10,000 hours of becoming an expert at something. You're going to get those 10,000 hours in pretty quick if you keep that growth mindset. It's really just like the difference when you're having someone lose weight or gain weight, just about the simple equation of calories in versus calories out, whichever way you're trying to make it work for you. And once you're on that path, it's just time. That's all it is. It's just consistency, and it just builds on itself, and it's amazing. So yeah, there's huge benefits to having that growth mindset, not being afraid of failure, and looking at everything as an opportunity to grow and learn.
Well, here's the question though, like, why do people not take responsibility when we know that that's the option that we do have? Is no matter what happens in our scenario, we have the ability to take responsibility and to do something from that point on. How come so many people get stuck and do not take responsibility a lot of times?
Well, I think, like you said, they don't know how.
Yeah.
Well,
That's one. Yeah.
I would say they, depending on the situation, if it's a good outcome, say it's like, praise and stuff, people are bound to take that responsibility. Hey, look at me, look at me. But if it's something like Mike said, where it's more negative and maybe they failed or something didn't go their way, people don't want to admit their failures or I was responsible for this. They just want to kind of pass it on to someone else or make an excuse or blame someone else.
Mhm.
But I also will go back and say, that's a lot of the environment. If you kind of look at the big picture, you always see other people or organizations, throwing back and forth, blaming other people, looking for just the easy way out. And I think basically as organisms, we always want to take the easy way. That's just how it is. And I think once the brain gets that option, it's just like natural. We don't have to sacrifice anything or suffer anything. And it's just like, boom. But if it's a good responsibility, people will jump all over that because they want the praise.
Well, I think what's also important to bring up is from that video we watched by Carol Dweck on the growth mindset, which is a really great video. You should check it out. It's a 10-minute video. Just Google Carol Dweck growth mindset. And she talks about the school systems and how they focus on the results more so than the process. And they had different case studies where they focused on the process more, and it proved to be beneficial in a few clinical trials.
So Matt, I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
What about though the scenario where you hear this a lot, where you've been in a conversation with someone and they say, I've tried everything, but I can't lose weight, or I've tried to stop smoking, but I can't. What do you say to somebody like that who says, I've tried to stop smoking, but I can't?
You just got to keep trying. You can't, I know it's tough to hear and it's like that tough love thing,
Yeah.
but it's tough because if you approach it in some way like, why don't give up easy? But I would just say, you just keep trying, keep going at it. You're going to find that point, that breaking point, and get over that hump where it's like, yeah, this sucks. But that is a very tough question and almost a tough feedback that you get from a lot of people for a lot of things.
Well, because
I think it starts with, because I've only had like one person ever actually say that to me, and I remember it was a in-home client I had back in Boston, and he was smoking about a pack a day, and he said, like he literally couldn't quit. And we talk about having goals and having short-term goals and having the process to get there, and he eventually got himself down to like two, like it was like he worked down to like 5 a day, and that was for good consistent time, and then he got down to like 3, and then he got down to 2, and then like on really stressful days 3, and it was about slowly taking those right steps to eventually get there. And the more and more he did it, I think the more and more he got improved growth mindset to the fact that, oh wow, I can do this is possible.
Yeah.
Like he gets a little taste of cutting down even just one cigarette out of the day, and then down to just a couple a day, and he's like, this is possible, I can get there. And then they can maybe even see the end of the tunnel where they're going to be not smoking cigarettes ever again.
And why do people continue to smoke versus like allowing themselves to stop? Because when somebody asks, or when somebody says to you, I've tried everything and I just can't stop smoking, You, me,
It
and
is
Eric can look at
truly
that.
the hardest physical addiction to get
It could be,
over.
but
Nick,
yeah,
it's
it absolutely could be. But we could look at that person and we could say, no, you absolutely can stop. A lot of people have done it before you, and you have the power to do that right now. That has power over you. I mean, I want to say to that person, well, actually, you can stop because in order to light that cigarette and bring it up to your mouth, your arm controls, your arm has to do that. And guess what? Your brain controls what your arm does. So you absolutely have the power 100%. The fact is like that it's hard work. To your point, that client of yours, it was a lot harder for him to go through that process to try to cut back and eventually eliminate smoking versus it's just much more habitual and easy to keep doing it because it's a loop. It's like it's a pattern. He's got something that triggers him and he does it versus implementing some sort of other trigger that's going to have some other substitutional habit in there that's going to change that process over time. I think that's the big thing is it comes back every time is it's hard work to change. It's hard work to do that. And so many people either don't want to do it or they just want to be comfortable. And that's probably our nature, right? It's our nature to be safe, to be secure, to take the safe route, the path of least resistance. That's where we gravitate towards because in order to achieve, in order to go beyond, you have to override that natural instinct to want to be comfortable.
correct.
And
It's hard work.
Well, it's a desire. It's a biological trait, right? To be comfortable and to part of the life cycle is death, so that we improve with each new coming of life,
Yes.
and we get
Survival.
better
We're
and
made
better.
for survival
and
at all
survival.
costs. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you're right. We have to remember that in modern society, life is way too easy on us, and we have to, so to speak, be the warrior in the garden and have to stimulate our body for growth in many different ways just because our normal everyday life doesn't do that anymore, whereas before it may have. And even things like I was listening to Ben Greenfield on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they're talking about the strength of our jaw and how it plays a role into just our overall strength in general. Like if you press the tongue to the roof of your mouth, how you literally can squeeze something harder or push your neck forward more, and how that way back in the day we didn't have like baby food and super soft chewy things for kids, and we've made our jaws weaker over time.
We're basically creating an environment that makes everything easy. Now it's going to be one click and Amazon will deliver your food for you. That's just going to create more of a fixed mindset. And like you said with your cigarette guy, growth mindset's not like a switch where it just turns and you're 100% full power growth mindset. You have to build that up over time.
It's like a dimmer switch.
Your brain's just like a muscle. It's malleable. It's not all of a sudden just going to adapt from one stimulus. You have to keep giving it a stimulus, adapt and grow and learn.
But where I was going with that though is I think I will take it back to politics, unfortunately, because this guy was in his 60s, and the way he talked about how he got into smoking was literally back in the day. I mean, come on, it was in so many different ad campaigns. It was promoted as healthy. It was literally promoted as a healthy alternative to stress and anxiety, and everybody was smoking in the 60s and 70s. And now we fast forward, and what's the main issue? Sugar addiction. And it's because of the way that these companies work, and they have studies where they find the bliss point in kids, and they market all these things to kids, and you start that sugar addiction young, and the way it works and fires on your dopamine systems. Like in the end of the day, we are animals, and it's not the consumer's fault necessarily. It's the people producing. In my opinion, sometimes, and they just have to be more responsible because in the end of the day, we're animals, we're creatures.
It's technology. If you look at even the AI stuff, eventually there's going to be so much intelligence that you're not going to think. What happens to the brain if you don't think? I know it's all cool and jazzy and all this stuff, but we're basically creating us to be useless as human beings,
mindless. Yeah, exactly. Just like numbers or
so from
bodies.
there, like. You take that environment. Obviously, you can't change the big environment, but you can change the environment around you inside your household, which will change
Yes.
the members of your household, which now have a bigger impact on their environment outside. So if you say you have 5 people in your household and they now can change an environment of 5 people around them, now you're starting a trend here. I mean, you're never going to knock the big one down, but if you push in that right way, I think that's a good way to start to attack, and get people in their right mind frame of this growth mindset.
Well, Eric,
And
I've got a well, I
sorry,
was
go
just saying,
ahead.
I've got a
Go ahead.
very specific example to what you just were talking about, which is like in working on bringing it into the household, and then also what you said before, which is like we're all kind of gearing everything towards this convenience. One click and it drops on my doorstep, or I just have to go through the drive-through and get my entire meal for my whole family and don't have to cook it. Think about it this way: what are some of the struggles that so many people have? Losing weight, right? And then we talk about the convenience. Like most of the people who are obese or overweight, a lot of times they're not cooking food. Like they're not making their own food. They're maybe they're cooking some of their meals, but they're also grabbing the bag of chips or things that are made easy. I can just open this bag and now I have sustenance. Like I can eat something. Think about if we were to make that shift, like you said, change the environment in your household, and you were only going to eat food that you cooked, right? Like I'm only going to eat what I cook myself.
Mhm.
Think about how you would not like it wouldn't even matter if you made pasta all the time. Like the fact that you're cooking the food and you're taking the time to do that, you would most likely be a lot healthier than if you were grabbing for convenience.
Yep.
And you would have the problem with that is nobody has time anymore because everyone's focused on, striving for more success, money, blah blah blah, versus getting into your kitchen, cook with your family, cook a whole meal, have your family involved, have time with your family to socialize and spend time with them. The stress goes down, the food tastes better. You have more pride in being able to do yourself. And oh, by the way, I'm losing weight as a result of it. Like the thing is it's hard to do that. It's hard to go shopping a couple times a week. It's hard to cook all your meals. It's hard. But the people who like everyone looks at the CrossFitter or the person, who's super fit, the trainer, and they're like, gosh, how do I look like you? Right? You've got all those people like, how do I look like you? Well, you can do all your meal prep on Sundays like I do, but you won't do it because it's hard work,
Yeah.
right? It always comes back to that. And, it's that human, like we have to override that human response, that natural response that we have.
Yeah, and I think first of all, I love you guys for bringing it right back to how to apply it like directly to today.
Yeah.
Like listen to this podcast, apply it like right
Strategy.
now,
Yeah.
because exactly like take that growth mindset, adjust your environment. And environment is literally just like anything outside of you, right? So even if it's going on your way home, stopping off at the sports store and picking up, I don't know, like a football or soccer ball, a couple tennis rackets, a tennis ball, because you're going to plan to just do more outside activities on the weekends with the family and the kids. So little things like that go a long way. I love how you're talking about cooking and meal prepping. I have, and I know you guys have probably some good suggestions too. I keep a working list of suggestions and ideas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I just add clients to. So if anybody wants to see some ideas, they're just kind of all stuff I collected from Pinterest over the years. And just email the podcast, thinkfitnesslife at gmail.com. That being said, as well, Blue Apron is a really good strategy to use, in my opinion.
Green Chef. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Blue Apron one. They sent it's simple. It's usually 5 steps to cook a dinner. They send all fresh, good sourced food and produce, and they send 3 dinners so that the girlfriend and I only have to really buy and plan for 2 other dinners for the week, and we meal prep our breakfast and lunch. So we just make things so easy nutritionally to stay on par with our goals and staying healthy. So send me an email because I have they gave me a lot of free meals I can send out to people and clients so they can try it out. So send an email to thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com if you want to try out Blue Apron, a free box for the week. It's definitely worth a shot to see if you can make it work with your timing and cooking for dinner and however you have to prepare. But yeah, I'm out of breath on all this now. And we're coming up on 56 minutes here, so let's go through our closing statements.
I will take it. Find someone around you. You can always learn something from someone. It's good to read these big books with these, really successful people, but if you look around, there's successful people right next door to you, right around you. Go find that person, learn from them, talk to them, see what they do right, see what they do wrong, see how they kind of learn from their mistake. Build yourself through that. And once you kind of find that, okay, this person can do it, you can do it too, and you just keep building. You're going to gain that growth mindset strength every time you make a right decision for yourself in the path of success. And I think for people that want this growth mindset, you have to do stuff you really don't like at times, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be mentally suffering, and you're going to get better each time you come out of that situation on the other side, and that grows, and you're just going to make better decisions in the long run.
Yeah, I'll second what you're saying, and I will just kind of build off of the whole environment piece, which is, for example, you need to be able to surround yourself with people who are doing what you wish you were doing, or who have already done something that you haven't been able to do yourself, because modeling their behavior is something you want to be around. People who you can kind of learn from. As Eric said, I look at, like, I was at a point in my early to mid 20s where actually after work every day I was going to the bar and I was just hanging out and drinking all night, and those are the people that I was hanging out with. And I was a loser, just like the rest of them that I was hanging out with. No offense to anybody who's listening to this that I was hanging out with at the time, but I considered myself a loser because I was just going and drinking all night, and I wasn't really amounting anything. I mean, I look at what we're doing now, right? Just us three. Instead, we're spending our evenings here having a really like organic discussion about how can we grow, how can we share, and how can we continue to learn from one another, share with what we know with other people so that they can grow as well. I think about people who are struggling all the time to get in shape. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get healthy. I don't know how to get fit. Just go to the gym. Just show up, because the gym is an environment that is just oozing with hard work, with other people who are there. And I think about, like, the reason I got into the fitness industry, because I wasn't doing anything. I was working in restaurants, just like a total loser, going out and drinking every night. And I started going to the gym, and I was like, I'm going to put the hard work in. I started going to the gym. I started chatting with other trainers. I started chatting with people who were fit. I started hanging out with them, and I started to develop these habits just because I was there. And it was like I made it my new environment, and I got healthier. And then it turned into a blossoming career that I now get the opportunity to do this, and and continue to teach, and develop new trainers, and continue to grow, and go to work conferences and seminars. And I mean, it's just amazing what you can do when you change the environment around you. And I would just say, anybody who's struggling with something that they haven't been able to do yet, put yourself into an environment, get around other people who are doing what you wish you were doing, and guaranteed some of that shit will rub off on you.
And all I want to add to that, because that was really well said, is just don't have a growth mindset with negative self-talk. Don't talk bad about yourself to get yourself to grow and learn about things. Be proud, but just never satisfied. Stay hungry for knowledge, and just find what industry or stuff you're passionate about, and everything just comes after that.
Love it. Stay hungry. Let's end it there. That's perfect.
Yeah. See you next week for nutrition strategies. Peace.